I never thought a dusty jar at the back of my pantry would bring me to tears on a Tuesday morning. But here I am, 67 years old, standing in my kitchen in Madison, Wisconsin, crying into my coffee while January snow piles up outside my window. Let me back up a little. My name is Eleanor, Ellie to most folks, and I've lived in this 3-bedroom ranch house for 42 years. My late husband Tom and I raised 3 children here, Michael, Sarah, and David. The walls still hold their pencil mark height charts, and sometimes I swear I can hear their laughter echoing down the hallway, even though they're all grown now with families of their own. This particular Tuesday started like most January mornings. I woke at 6:30, made my coffee in the old percolator that Tom insisted made the best brew, and settled into my reading chair by the front window. The neighborhood was still asleep, streetlights glowing against fresh snowfall from overnight. Our street looked like a Christmas card, white blankets covering every roof, icicles hanging from the Johnsons' gutters across the way, and old Mr. Patterson already out with his snowblower, bless his heart. I was supposed to spend the morning organizing my pantry. My daughter Sarah had been after me for weeks about it during our Sunday phone calls. "Mom, you've got to go through those shelves. Some of that stuff is probably older than my kids." She wasn't wrong, but I'd been putting it off. Not because I'm lazy, though my joints do protest more these days, but because pantries hold memories, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face them all. But that morning, with my coffee still warm and the house quiet, I decided today was the day. I started with the obvious things: expired cake mixes from 2022, half-empty bags of flour, those canned vegetables I bought during the pandemic lockdown thinking we'd need them. Into the donation box they went. I was making good progress, humming along to the radio, when my hand brushed against something at the very back of the top shelf. A mason jar of peach preserves. My breath caught in my throat. The label was in my mother's handwriting, that careful, slanted cursive I'd know anywhere. Peach preserves, August 1998, it read. 27 years old, I carefully lifted the jar down, and suddenly I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. I was back at my parents' farm in rural Ohio, watching Mama work her magic with bushels of peaches from the orchard. I was 38 years old again, with my 3 kids running wild in the backyard while Mama and I stood side by side at her stove, the kitchen windows fogged with steam, the sweet smell of cooking fruit filling every corner of the house. "Ellie," she'd said that day, "I'm teaching you this recipe because someday you'll want to remember this moment. You'll want to taste this summer again." I'd laughed at her then. Mama always had a flair for the dramatic, but I'd watched carefully, learned the exact amount of sugar, the precise timing, the way she tested the gel on a cold spoon. We'd made 20 jars that week, and she'd sent me home with half of them. This was the last one. I set the jar on the counter and just stared at it. Mama had been gone for 12 years now. Daddy followed her 6 months later, died of a broken heart, we all said, though the doctors called it a stroke. I thought I'd used up all those preserves years ago, spread on toast or stirred into oatmeal. But here was one more, hiding in the shadows all this time, waiting. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my reverie. I wiped my eyes quickly and opened the door to find my daughter-in-law Jessica standing there, my 8-year-old grandson Lucas bundled beside her in his puffy winter coat. "Surprise," Jessica said brightly, though her smile faltered when she saw my face. "Oh, Ellie, are you okay? We probably should have called first." No, come in, please," I said, ushering them into the warmth. "I'm fine, just being silly over some old memories." Lucas immediately started peeling off his snow gear, leaving a puddle by the door that I'd normally fuss about but couldn't bring myself to care about today. Jessica gave me a concerned look. "Michael's at a conference in Chicago until Thursday," she explained, "and Lucas has a snow day. I thought maybe he could hang with Grandma Ellie while I catch up on some work from home. But if this is a bad time—" "It's a perfect time," I said, meaning it. "I was just organizing the pantry." Lucas groaned dramatically. "That sounds boring, Grandma." "Oh, you'd be surprised what you can find in old pantries," I said, thinking of that jar still sitting on my counter. "Come on, I'll make you hot chocolate." Jessica left after extracting promises from Lucas to behave, and soon it was just my grandson and me in the kitchen. He sat at the table swinging his legs, telling me about the snow fort he and his friends were planning to build, about his teacher, Mrs. Anderson, who was pretty cool for an adult, and about the new video game everyone at school was talking about. I only half listened, my eyes keep drifting to that jar of preserves. "Grandma?" Lucas said finally. "You're being weird. What's that?" He pointed at the jar. I picked it up carefully. "This is peach preserves that your great-great-grandmother made the summer before you were born." His eyes went wide. "That's really old. Is it like poison now?" I laughed despite myself. "Probably, but that's not why it's special." I sat down across from him. "Lucas, do you remember your great-grandma at all?" He scrunched up his face, thinking, "Not really, I was really little, but I remember Daddy showing me pictures. She had white hair like you." "She did." I turned the jar in my hands, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "She was one of the strongest, kindest people I ever knew. She grew up during the Depression, raised 4 kids on a farm, never complained about hard work, and she taught me that love shows up in the small things, like making preserves on a hot August day, even though you're tired and your feet hurt." Lucas nodded solemnly, sensing this was important even if he didn't fully understand. "Want to know something?" I said. "I was planning to just throw this away today, organize it right into the trash because it's too old to eat, and what's the point of keeping something you can't use, right?" "But," Lucas prompted, "but maybe some things are worth keeping even if you can't use them the way they were meant to be used." I stood up, an idea forming. "Come on, let's do something." For the next hour, Lucas and I worked together on a project. We found an old shadow box frame in my craft closet, and I carefully cleaned the outside of the jar until it shone. Lucas helped me make a label with information about his great-great-grandmother, her name Martha Jane Hoffman, her dates, the farm in Ohio, the year she made these preserves. We arranged the jar in the shadow box with a photo I dug out from my albums, Mama in her kitchen, laughing at the camera, her hands covered in flour. "This is cool, Grandma," Lucas said as we worked. "It's like a museum." "It's like a memory made solid," I said, "so we don't forget where we came from." We were just finishing when my phone rang. It was Sarah, my daughter, calling from Portland where she lived with her husband James and their 2 teenagers. "Mom, I've got news," she said. Her voice strained in a way that made my grandmother instincts flare. "Can you talk?" I stepped into the living room, watching Lucas through the doorway as he carefully placed stickers on the shadow box frame. "What's wrong, honey?" "Nothing's wrong exactly, it's just James got a job offer, a really good one in Milwaukee." My heart leaped. "Milwaukee? But that's only 2 hours from here." "I know." She let out a breath. "Mom, we've been in Portland for 15 years. The kids have their friends, their school. Emma's a Jun. IOR in high school. This is terrible timing." "But," I said, hearing the unspoken word, "but I'm so tired of being far away from you. The kids barely know you. We see you maybe twice a year. When you fell on the ice last winter, I was on a plane for 6 hours, terrified the whole time. And Mom, you're not getting any younger." "Thanks for that reminder," I said dryly, making her laugh. "You know what I mean. James and I talked all night. We're going to say yes. We're moving back to Wisconsin. This summer, probably July." I sat down heavily on the couch, my vision blurring with tears for the second time that day. "Sarah, are you sure? I don't want you uprooting your family for me." "It's not just for you, though that's a huge part of it. It's for us too. We want to be closer to family. We want Sunday dinners together and spontaneous visits. We want our kids to actually know their grandmother, not just through video calls." After we hung up, after I'd cried and she'd cried and we'd talked logistics and timing and how to break the news to Emma and her younger brother Ryan, I sat in the quiet of my living room, watching the snow fall outside my window. Lucas appeared in the doorway, holding the finished shadow box. "Grandma, it's done. Want to see?" I pulled him close, looking at the beautiful tribute he'd helped me create. Mama's face smiled out from behind the glass, frozen in time, holding the legacy of love that had traveled through generations and would keep traveling. "It's perfect, sweetheart," I whispered. That evening, after Jessica had picked up Lucas and I'd heated up some soup for dinner, I sat in my reading chair with the shadow box on my lap. Michael called to check in from Chicago. David texted from Denver, where he lived with his wife Rachel, promising to visit in February for Rachel's birthday. Sarah sent pictures of Emma and Ryan, both excited about the move despite Emma's initial protests. I thought about how a single jar hidden in a pantry had cracked me open that morning, how Lucas's presence had helped me transform grief into something beautiful, how Sarah's news had answered a prayer I'd been too afraid to pray out loud. Mama was right. Love does show up in small things, in preserves made with careful hands, in grandsons who patiently glue pictures, in daughters who choose to come home. I placed the shadow box on my mantel, right in the center where everyone could see it, It would be here when Sarah's family arrived in July. I'd tell them the story, pass down the recipe, maybe even teach Emma how to make preserves next summer if the season was good. But as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I remembered something that made me pause. There was another box in the back of my closet, the one I'd been avoiding for even longer than the pantry, the one with Tom's things, his watch, his favorite flannel shirt, the letters he'd written me during his deployment before we were married. I'd thought I wasn't ready to face those memories yet, thought maybe I'd never be ready, but standing there in the dark hallway I wondered, what if that box held its own jar of preserves? Its own piece of the past that was waiting to become something beautiful in the present. I opened the closet door, pulled the string for the overhead light, and stared at the box on the top shelf. Tomorrow, I decided, tomorrow I'll be brave enough to look inside. But tonight, I'd learned that sometimes the things we've kept hidden for too long choose their own moment to be found. And when they do, they bring exactly what we need, even if we didn't know we were looking for it. I closed the closet door and smiled in the darkness, already wondering what treasure I'd find next, what story was waiting to be told, what piece of my heart was ready to be remembered and honored and shared with the people I loved most. After all, January was just beginning. If you enjoyed this grandma story, please like, subscribe, and stay with our F.